If everybody wouldn't mind taking your cell phones or your pagers, if you still manage to have one of those, and either turn the sound off or turn it off. Also, we have a Twitter feed, which I will talk about in just a moment. And so if you have any questions that you want to ask, you can put them on the Twitter, and that way you don't have to remember to ask them at the end. So anyways, I would like to welcome everybody to our second show of the year. And this is a really interesting one. This one is brought to us by the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council of Canada, which we all know as NSERC. And NSERC has partnered with us to bring you this event. NSERC is the national instrument for making strategic investments in Canada's capability in science and technology, investing more than $1 billion annually in basic research, university industry projects, and training of scientists and engineers. Over 1,500 Canadian companies currently benefit from NSERC's partnership programs. These cost-shared programs can help your company build research relationships and advance its R&D. And I'd like to, you can contact NSERC's local office or visit their website, which is www.nserc.gc.ca, so nserc.gc.ca. With us tonight is Megan Griffith, who will be moderating our lightning pitches in a moment, and is a volunteer in our operations committee. Please seek out Megan and Rick Warner, and they would be delighted to speak with you about NSERC and the programs during our networking session afterwards. VEF is striving to create and catalyze collaborations that will support technology entrepreneurs with the tools and mentorship they need to successfully launch and grow their ventures. VEF is delighted to welcome many attendees from academia, industry, universities, and we have guest faculty members and researchers and students from all of our universities and technical institutes here this evening. Please spend some time after the presentation meeting some new people and visiting our exhibitors out in the front. Before I start, I'd like to take a minute to thank our many sponsors and supporters who help the VEF continue to host these events and make the ticket price affordable for us. All the sponsors are profiled on our website and behind me here. Please do seek out some of our sponsors in the event, have a chat with them, let them know that they're appreciated. We are also actively looking for new sponsors, anybody who would like to help support the organization, support entrepreneurs, and help to educate, inspire, and connect entrepreneurs to be successful. Please feel free to drop by our front desk and connect with Chris McDonald, our executive director, or even myself during the show or after the show. Also, I'd like to recognize a couple of sponsors tonight. Each event, we recognize some of our key sponsors. Tonight, PricewaterhouseCoopers Canada, PwC's team of over 70 technology industry-focused audit, tax, consulting, and deal specialists in BC help technology companies manage startup challenges, enhance revenues, manage costs, keep pace with regulatory changes, attract and retain top talent, plus IT strategy, business information, mergers, acquisitions, and exits. If I can ask Faiz Karmali and Chris Gilligan to stand up and not only be recognized, but I'd like to thank them with a round of applause, if you don't mind. Thank you. I think they have a beer just outside. The other one of our long-term sponsors is BCIT. BCIT conducts applied research to enhance the learner experience and advance state-of-the-art practice. BCIT also supports employer success and economic development by focusing on applied research activities in areas that engage faculty and students to solve business and industry problems to increase competitive strength. If I can ask James McCartney and Joe Boyd to stand and be recognized and thanked with a round of applause. Thanks, James. I see a theme here, the accountants drink. The academics really want to be in here in bikinis. I like that. We have, they may drink, but they're still very highly valued members of our society. We have many other representatives here from our sponsors and supporters, and thank you all for joining us tonight. And now I'd like to welcome Megan, if Megan is nearby, to come up. That's funny. I didn't think I saw her this evening. Okay. Megan is going to be taking care of our lightning pitches, but I think Megan has run into traffic or something like that, but we'll find out. So if you don't mind, I will take over the lightning pitches. And so if I can invite our lightning pitchers to come up and take the stand. So for those of you here for the first time, our lightning pitches are 100-second public service announcements, and we choose these related to community announcements or people that are seeking to raise funds, seeking people to build their companies. There's no rules, and anybody who would like to join our lightning pitches are welcome to come up and just apply with our executive director on our website beforehand. Now, 100-second limits, and if you go over 100 seconds, I cut you off rudely and ruthlessly. If I may start off with Robert McGarry of NRC-IRAP to speak, who are very big supporters of the VEF. Please go ahead.
Great, thank you. My name is Rob McGarry. I'm with the federal government's new concierge program. There are a lot of great programs available for SMEs in the innovation space. In fact, in BC alone, there's over 45, and we're growing all the time. We're representing all of the government programs beyond NRC. The big problem has been that most SMEs cannot find the right program for funding or mentorships or innovation. They've had a hard time finding them. Or if they have found them, they've become confused or lost their way trying to find the right fit. So the solution was to create a new service, a concierge service. It's a service across Canada. It's a free service. And it's staffed by experienced advisors who will get in touch with an SME, sit down and do a initial needs assessment, identify 3 or 4 programs that might be a good fit, and then do a warm introduction between the owners of those programs, and that way they can meet, get together, and see if it's a good fit. NSERC being one of the great partners that we work with. So if anybody would like to learn more about this, then please go to the website. Please send us emails, call us. My colleague Julie and myself are welcome, or will always welcome people calling us. And come to our table, and we have lots of swag and stuff we'd like to give away to people. So thank you. Take advantage of your tax dollar.
Thank you very much, Robert. And next, I would like to introduce Robin Fetterly from Startup Weekend UBC.
Hi there, I'm Ryan Fetterly with Startup Weekend UBC. Startup Weekend is basically 48-hour, 54-hour pitch and brainstorming and lean model canvas, kind of every buzzword these days in one weekend. So it's March 14th to 16th. Why I'm here today, I'm more looking for mentors and coaches. So there's a team of students at UBC that are putting it together, and I'm sort of the liaison between the students and the industry. And so if you don't know what it is, basically they form teams throughout the weekend, they do business model validation, and then they present to judges in a pitch at the end. So there's 3 categories of individuals I'm making an ask for today. Number 1, if you want to participate, be my guest. You can register on our website and participate in the weekend if you're interested in sort of learning these new methods around venture creation. We're looking for coaches and mentors to help build the next generation of entrepreneurs. So if you have experience in that or are interested in getting involved, come see me. And also, we're looking for judges that will be judging the pitches on the Sunday night. So here are the 3 brackets of coaching sessions. If you're more into customer validation, it's on the Saturday. Business model coaching also on the Saturday afternoon, and pitch and presentation coaching on the Sunday. So that's pretty much it. If you guys are interested, come find me. I'll be the only guy probably in the orange shirt, and you can contact me directly or through our website, and that's Startup Weekend UBC on Google. You can easily find it. Thanks.
103 seconds. I was tempted to cut you off on your website, but okay, we'll let you go on that one. Next, I would like to. By the way, I'm reading these names for the first time, so forgive me if I'm. Oh, I know you. It's okay. I know your name. That one's easier. I just skipped down a level here. So this is Reg Nordman of Rocket Builders, also a longtime supporter of the VEF.
Thanks, Ian. We're looking for, just to remind some of the folks that may not have put their nominations in for Ready to Rocket companies. It's the program that focuses on BC high-tech companies, companies that are poised for growth. We have 2 levels: the rockets, which are making money, hiring people, growing 30% year over year, and the emerging rockets, which are poised to do that, but it's just too early to tell. Just wanted to note that if you're on the list, then of course I'm looking for your data. I got 2 today, and we'll keep looking at those guys. But the other part is that on Friday, we want to make sure that everybody who has never been on the list before, that's got a company that should be worthwhile, has got themselves in. And it's on the readytorocket.com. Now the three levels: ICT, life sciences, and clean tech. And the reason we have a Ready to Rocket list is because of guys like Ian and Espresso and Faskins and Goal and everybody else that's really came to the table to support this program. So we really want you guys to make sure you're in there and make sure we really thank the sponsors. If you're shy and you don't want to go online and register your company at readytorocket.com, you can contact any one of the rocket builders today, and they're receiving your nominations. And we're looking forward on March the 12th to announce the 12th annual Ready to Rocket list. And why don't you guys just give Ian and these other sponsors a real hand for keeping this thing going. Thanks very much.
Hey, Brian, I didn't know you. Congratulations. Brian Kennert, one of the newer teams of Rocket Builders. You should seek him out. He gives great advice. And somebody I've known for a long time. Terrific fellow. And just sticking with the script, making thanks Reg, and introduces Erez Barzilay from Shailah. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Let me share an astonishing fact with you. 3.5 million kids in North America are faced with permanent challenges to talk, and even more a challenge with fine pointing and touch. This prevents them from using mobile touchscreens, proven to be so helpful for kids who face severe communication challenges. My name is Erez from Shailah Interactive. Last spring, we released the world's first touchless educational mobile app, a Bazoo Story for Android. The very first step in the world of mobile touchless communication. This spring, we want to release it to Apple's iPads and iPhones. Bazoo is aimed at very early communicators with autism and other communication challenges. It has been rated 5 stars on the app page of Autism Speaks, the most prominent voice for the developmentally challenged. It has also been recommended by Pearson Homeschooling as one of the top 5 apps that can help kids with autism learn. Our app is being used by kids in over 40 countries and over 50 different states. We want to thank you all for so much support, amazing support and feedback. We now need your help to get Bazoo onto Apple device near you. Your support will allow us to offer new gestures and experience like no other. Improve the touchless interaction, reaching many more nonverbal kids that can take their first step into the world of mobile touchless communication. Thank you so very much.
Erez, before I let you off the hook, what do you need?
We need contacts, but we're looking for seed funding. We really want to start paying people. We bootstrapped until now, and we want to have that, and we already showing some minimal revenue on Android, and we are sure we will do very well on iOS. We have some very good examples around.
Sorry for commandeering. I'm going over 100 seconds, but this is really truly a worthy cause, and if there's anything else you'd like to kind of let us know how to get in touch with you, we're definitely keen to help support children with autism. All of us, whether we realize it or not, deal with this. If we have children or are going to have children, this is a big impact on the learning, the classroom assets and the learning potential for your children that are associated and have children with development needs in your school.
So just to add to this, so basically what we are doing, we're taking those technologies and we're bringing them to mobile devices. We insist to do that. Of course, they're working on Kinect and other, but on mobile devices, this has never been before. We haven't seen it yet. And basically what we are doing, we're catering our content, touchless content, especially for the people that cannot find point and touch, in the hope that they can be included now in classrooms and in society. That's kind of the mission of what we are doing. And we'll take it all the way to all of us in very couple of years. Honey, can you Google it for me? No, you can. So we're showing the video up there on the table, and you can see how it works very well, even if you don't have a steady hand, which is very, very fascinating and very, very inspiring for us. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for letting me pitch in. Please have a seat, and thank you very much for joining us. And now I would like to introduce and hand over the panel to Dr. Winter. And I have a little bit I'd just like to introduce is Dr. Winter has a long bio, but he's got some key things here that are very interesting. Not only is he the president and CEO of Genome British Columbia, which I'll let him describe a little bit, but he was the CEO of New Media Innovation Center in Vancouver, the president of Condev Space Group in Ontario, the president and CEO of NPR Teltech. And some of you will know, and some of you probably, it might be a bit before your time, but NPR Teltech has spun out and is basically the foundation of much of our technology here in BC, spinning out such companies as PMC Sierra, Sierra Wireless, 6 other companies as well, but some of the more famous ones spawned a group of entrepreneurs, starting off with Octiga Bay, Redback, and that's the group with John Seminario and I forget his other name, Mr. Terry, another Terry.
Paul Terry.
Paul Terry, and that group that has really brought an incredible amount of capital and impact and worldwide recognition to our tech center in BC. I think it's really difficult to sort of emphasize just how important that organization was, and tonight we have the benefit of having the former CEO come to join us to moderate. Also, I'd like to give a little bit extra. He is a director of Alberta Innovates Technology Futures, OceanWorks Canada, chair of the Board of Communications Research Centre, deputy chair of the Council of the Science and Technology Advisors, a member of the BC Premier's Council on Science and Technology, FCASI, which is the fellow of Canadian Aeronautics and Space Institute, FCAE, a fellow of the Canadian Academy of Engineering, and JGFI, an all-around jolly good fellow indeed. If I may hand over to Mr. Winter, thank you very much.
Good. Let's come up to the front here. Good. So can you hear me now? At the back, we'll go. Okay, well, thank you very much, Tim, for that. And really, this is an exciting evening. This is really characters who are entrepreneurs from whom we can learn a lot. And so I'm actually really interested in this to and from discussion. So welcome to each of you here. We would like to get to questions and answers at some point in time, and since I know a number of you in the audience, I may turn to you if we would like to get questions going, and not to mention names, but Mike Volker, I think, is here, and I think others too, John Barkley and Claire and Lee Vishloff and others. So the more that you can help us with questions, the better it is. I'd like really to start off by allowing each of the panelists to introduce themselves. Now, the reason for that is that the VEF mission is to educate, entertain, inspire, and connect entrepreneurs. And I think rather than my reading kind of the background for each person, it's better to allow you to put it into your words yourselves. The theme for the evening, which we'll get to, is collaboration for corporate growth, or how does academic research or the links or collaboration benefit industry? And we're going to get there, but we'd like to start by understanding the context of the people we have on stage and the companies that they represent. So first of all, and I'll just mention who they are and then we'll go back. Terry Thomas, on my far left, is the Senior Vice President of Stemcell Technologies, Inc. Darryll Frost's CEO of Capital City Brewing Company, and outside you will see their products, and Darryll has very kindly provided some of that for our evening entertainment. Thank you, Darryll, for that. That's just great. And Patric Ouellette, Senior Vice President of Westport Innovations, and we'll learn more about each of these as time goes on. These are really exciting companies in British Columbia. To some extent, they're kind of a best-kept secrets that we have many of them actually in BC. And I think always the interesting parts are the personal stories that go with growth. You know, we hear about a company and we think, boy, that's an overnight success. And yet when you actually start to understand the stories go back maybe 15 or 20 years. And it's a little bit of teasing that out for entrepreneurs in the audience, others who are involved with companies, etc. It's teasing out those personal stories that really are very interesting. So starting, Terry, with yourself, can you tell us a little bit about how you got from where you started to where you are now?
Okay. I'll start. I think it's best to put it in context. I think I'll talk a little bit about Stemcell Technologies. Okay. Some of you are familiar with the company. It's privately held. It's tended to be under the radar for many, many years. It's a biotech company. We make products for researchers, stem cell researchers, immunologists, and cancer researchers. So it's that liquid they use in the lab when they culture their cells. And also we have a cell separation system that's quite unique to our company. And the company is now over 500 employees. It's 20 years old as of last July. And it's kind of been a steady growth story, and I can talk a little bit about that later. To put it in context, we have 600 unique products and like 100 product lines. So this isn't a one-trick pony. It's a lot of different products. Quite a number of them developed in-house. So how did I end up, first of all, how did I ever end up working in industry? When I got out of high school, my goal was to work with Jacques Cousteau. And so my first 2 degrees were in marine biology. My PhD was also in marine biology, but with a big, heavy cell biology, chemistry background. I did a postdoc and then started looking around for a career change and got a great opportunity to do a postdoc at the Terry Fox Lab here in Vancouver. And they were working on leukemia research, looking for the mechanisms of normal blood formation as well as leukemia. And I worked there for 8 years, and part of my work was looking at how to isolate or purify the cells you really wanted to study. So I ended up getting involved in magnetic separations. I knew nothing about magnets. I certainly didn't know anything about the huge electromagnets that I originally used. But over the years, we developed a system that was used clinically in the bone marrow transplant setting. And I certainly wasn't thinking I'd end up being an entrepreneur or even working in industry. But it became obvious that the technique that we developed would be useful to researchers all around the world. And that's the same premise that stem cell technology started. Its first product was a liquid you grew cells in, and it came out of the Terry Fox lab, and researchers around the world wanted that media or liquid to grow cells in. And so those were sort of the first two products. So I was approached by the owner, Alan Eves. Would I consider joining the company and adapting what at that time was a large-scale clinical system, so this is kind of backwards, to small-scale research, what anyone could use on their bench in their lab. So that's how I ended up at Stem Cell Technologies. I've been there, will be 20 years in June. And there were 8 people when I joined, and as I mentioned, there's over 500 now. So
8 to 500.
8 to 500, yeah.
Good. Now, Terry, just to finish up on that, why are stem cells so interesting these days? What's the potential of stem cells? Why do people want to be working in this area?
Well, I think the name stem cells more or less explains it. They're the stem or the beginning of everything. Theoretically, from a pluripotent stem cell, you can get every cell or every organ in the body. Stem cell research has been done for a lot of years in mice, but there was this barrier. We couldn't make a pluripotent stem cell in the human system. We knew about, especially the stem cell in blood. Like, as I said, I was in leukemia research. That's probably it is the oldest use of a stem cell is in a bone marrow transplant setting. So we knew there were stem cells in blood that could form the blood-making system. But the big excitement more recently is the pluripotent stem cell in the human system. Because, as I say, for years they could do it in the mouse. So the potential of a pluripotent stem cell is everything. So if you think about it, regenerative medicine is probably the biggest application. Theoretically, you can make any organ or tissue starting with one of these pluripotent stem cells. I could talk for hours and hours of how far we are away from that or how close we are to it. But
well, maybe questions will open that up, Terry. But thank you, because it's a really interesting area. And we think of the biotech community really with sort of small companies, but very high value because the drugs they're developing or whatever are important. But I think stem cell technology is kind of one of those companies that's really interesting because it has the ability to move in many different directions. And it's really providing a service at this point into products, which as you say, can be used in many areas. So that's great. Thank you, Terry. Darryll Frost, CEO of Central City Brewing Company. And again, thank you, Darryll, for being part of this. And an exciting process. You seemed as well to have gone from, as you said, a craft brewing outfit to really, I think, Canada's top brewing company. So can you tell us a bit about that and how you got part of it?
So the start of Central City Brewing Company was just a little brew pub in North Surrey 10 years ago. So 10 years ago, I felt that was going to be the center of Surrey and lots of activity and a new university and a great place to put a brew pub. It was supposed to be the assimilation of ICBC to a brand new $250 million facility, and I was invited to put a brew pub at the bottom of the tower. And midway through construction, government changed, and there was no assimilation of ICBC to that tower. So we became a 12,500 square foot brew pub with no major tenant in the middle of Whalley, Surrey. Great start, and that's not what we had envisioned. So necessity became the mother of invention, and after opening and bleeding heavily for the first 5 years, throughout that time, that first 5 years, we discovered what we could do right and we nurtured that along. So obviously for Central City Brewing Company, the beer was really important, and it was well received. So we worked on the beer. We're a business all alcohol. We distill, we brew, we retail. So we're all about that. But from my perspective, certainly, a business with a moral compass. We started that way, and we remain that way today. We make beer. So if we make beer, and we make good beer, in fact, we make great beer. So with that said, if we wanted to line up and reduce our price to the point where we have a lineup, we could have done that. We chose to take the high ground, and I think we were recognized for that. So the years piled on, but so did the accolades for Central City's brewing team. And 8 years in, we decided, after a number of small expansions, that if you look at the financial model for it, it was either retract to profitability or jump right out and take the chance. We were safe at that point. In 7.5 years, we became safe, we were profitable, so we decided to take the dice and roll it with everything that we had. So at that point, we signed a lease with the City of Surrey, and they provided 5.5 acres of land, and we built our new facility on it, $15.5 million of cash. And we took that jump from little tiny craft brewery, that little tiny, most successful craft brewery in Canada, and become a regional brewery, and have the ability to export into different markets. So the facility that we built today is not necessarily just for BC or for Canada. It really is for the North American market, and certainly beyond. So we're, with the help of all different levels of government, provincial and municipal, we took, and of course our partnership, who, to give it some reference, we started off with $3.5 million worth of capital. The next jump was another $1.5 million, and then over subsequent years, as we expanded, up to $9 million. We rolled that company into what the government puts out as an eligible business corporation. We fully funded that from within our group, and then we added a venture capital corporation, which is a sole source vehicle for us to finance our expansion. Another $10 million to so privately raised capital, in addition to the $15.5 million that you see provided by the City of Surrey. And what we have is a state-of-the-art craft brewery and distillery, because of course whiskey comes from beer. It's beer first. So we're really good at making beer. It's a natural step to take it to whiskey. So of course we make whiskey, and we make other spirits as well, of course. So we're 5 months in, and I think the book is half written.
Good. Well, we're looking forward to the rest of the book, Darryll. Did you always see yourself as an entrepreneur?
Yes, I think so. I think I'm certainly a risk taker. There's no question about that. Just smart enough to do it, and plenty dumb enough not to worry about it.
maybe that'll open up some questions here.
Sure.
That's good. Good point. Patric, this is a professor's dream, and you've implemented it in terms of Westport. Gone from employee number 2 to 1,000 employees. So again, a tremendously successful operation. Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. It's in my case, it's I find myself about 20 years ago as well. I found myself in this really stereotypical situation: brilliant professor, new idea, big world problem to change, and then serial entrepreneur came to look for technologies to commercialize. I'd been successful at a few, but wanted to do more. And I was probably representing a third leg to this circle, which is kind of you've got the graduate students, right? You got the grad students there that you got to look for as an entrepreneur, because at the end of the day, they might be the people that will be your VPs. They might be the people that will actually do a lot of the work, and will be the people that will drive things forward and will probably put a lot of culture in your company. So I'm there as a grad student. I haven't imagined myself as an entrepreneur. However, from the get-go, and you have to watch for this if you're looking for grad students, right? I'm a super specialist. I've been spending 6 years in university doing underexpanded gaseous fuel jets. Where the hell am I going to find a job? Because this is a very narrow specialization, right? I've been 10 years in school, which means you know what happens with my financial situation. By then, I already have 2 kids. So I'm looking for my first job with a pretty good anxiety. I have time, as many grad students have. I'm here because I wanted to ski. I'm here because I was climbing. I'm here because I was backcountry skiing. And suddenly there's a certain amount of time and passion that could be diverted to something else. And of course, because of my wilderness and outdoors passion, I was certainly interested in the environmental aspect of what Dr. Hill had been working on. And so this is a good recipe, because you can find a grad student like that. You can bribe them pretty easily to join in. They're pretty desperate to get into something. And I find myself there. And of course, as the risk taking there is, okay, this is not a serious company. There's 2 people. There's $50,000. Don't know if it's going to be there next year. But hey, this is something that I've contributed to. This is a dream. This is exciting. And you find yourself from day 2, you've almost finished your doctorate, and you're writing patent applications. You're doing marketing material. You're serving coffee. You are developing. You're doing design. You get yourself in a machine shop, and you just completely atypical of getting into a big company. You just everything gets thrown at you, and you kind of get to pick what to do and what you're good at and what you're not so good at. So that was 20 years ago.
And then Patric, just in terms of summary of Westport today, you've got a lot of different things going on with natural gas, really in diesel engines, and links with a number of the big, well-known companies. Is that true?
Yeah. So if you make a step of 20 years, and hopefully we get a chance to talk in between. So today, as you indicated, we are about 1,000 employees, over some offices in the U.S., in Canada, in Beijing, in Italy. Some of this was us opening office. Some of it was acquisition. We are doing gaseous fuel systems for partner engines, and so we develop parts and approaches to enable engines and vehicles to run with gaseous fuels, whether they are natural gas, which is the primary fuel, or sometimes propane. And we tend to do that largely in partnership. So key to our growth has been to work with partners. So we have partnered with Cummins in the early years, one of the largest independent heavy-duty engine maker, with partners with Weichai in China. Since 2007, 2008, I had a chance to spend some time and live in China for the start of that joint venture during my career. They are probably the largest truck engine maker in the world by now, and nobody knows their name, so that's it's intriguing because it's somewhere else. We have partnerships with Volvo, Caterpillar, Ford, GM, Volvo car, Volvo truck, and more to come. So it's been exciting.
Exciting, right? Yeah. Oh, good. Well, thank you for that background. So the kind of theme that we were wanting to ask some questions around was, if you look at that growth, so being an entrepreneur and taking a company quite a long way over 20 years or whenever, what links were there with, what academic links were there, and was there an example of that which helped, that collaboration helped growth? And so if we think of that, I know, Terry, in your case, a lot of what you do is part of teaching hospital. You're part of UBC in that sense. But has that link or those links helped the corporate growth that you've had?
Well, definitely. I mean, the company was established with inventions that came out of the Terry Fox lab, who was part of UBC at the time. And those ties have stayed close, ongoing. NSERC is a co-sponsor here tonight, and we've had several NSERC co-op students, more than several. I think I looked at the number today before I came down here. In over 20 years, we've had 85 sponsored co-op students, co-op students via NSERC. We've had industrial fellowship for probably about 20 postdocs over the years, and that's been really helpful. And I'm happy to say that 17 of them are still with us, so they have permanent positions. And then also, we've sponsored a number of, we've been the industry sponsor on a number of grant applications, usually several a year, every year going through. So that's direct links to NSERC, but also we just have connections with the leaders in the field. That's how we can stay ahead of our customers. That's how we can service the researcher. And that's one of the most exciting and also the most challenging things about working at stem cell technologies is your customers are researchers. And within a few years, whatever tool you gave them is obsolete. They want something different. They want to do something different. So you have to stay ahead with the researchers, and you have to know what's going on. So we've kept very, very close ties. And as we got bigger, of course, we had more collaborations. And I looked up our database today, and at the moment we have 132 active collaborations with academics.
So it must be a challenge to manage all of that. So are there pros and cons to the things that you've learned, or is there advice that you would have for another organization in that sort of business?
Yeah, I guess we're overwhelmed with really exciting possibilities. And I think one of the biggest challenges, I mean, you can put it in a positive vein and deciding which ones you're going to pursue, but I find functionally it usually ends up deciding which ones you have the courage to say no to, because you actually want to do them all. So, deciding where to put your resources, because it's such an exciting, expanding field.
Yeah. So kind of a focus is needed.
Yeah, that's the biggest challenge.
600 products.
Yes, you can see we're not that good at focusing knowledge. Yeah. I mean, you might wonder how on earth can you get 600 products in stem cell research? Well, just think every tissue in your body. There are researchers out there looking into diabetes, the pancreas, into repairing hearts, heart attacks. So there's all the different tissue types. And not only do you have to grow the cells, you have to analyze them somehow, and you have to separate them. So there's just endless possibilities.
Oh, that's neat. So, and Darryll, this is now, I think in your case, you're going to be working with SFU, or you're doing that, but it's really technology transfer going to the university rather than from the university. Is that, did I get that right? Or?
I think it's both ways.
Do you want to explain the background to the project and even how it happened?
Sure. So we were approached actually by UBC to do a brew pub there, and so I went to see the facility at UBC and came back to Central City in Surrey, and I happened to park next to Joanne Curry, who's the executive director of that campus, and I asked her, we parked next to one another, and we just happened to park at the same time, and I said, Joanne, why is it that UBC are calling me to open a brew pub and you're not? Well, that started the conversation, and within a couple of months we had the framework for some sort of collaboration. It actually took a long time to get from that meeting to where we are today. And where we are today is SFU has taken over the old space for the brewery, and we're going to be we're going to teach the practical component of brewing and distilling to students from SFU. And so that's great for us because we get to give back. We get to train students in a myriad of different activities that relate to brewing and distilling. And on the flip side, what we have access to now is the brain power of SFU. There are things that they could do in their labs that we would never get to, algorithms from their math department that we would never think of doing. And so we'll be the recipient of all of that information, and we'll get it firsthand. I think certainly they will require it to be disseminated down to industry, but we'll see it first. So the participation there is we give and we receive. So it's certainly both ways.
So was this? So when this happened, and you were UBC and SFU and so on, I suppose the most natural link for you was SFU because of the location in Surrey.
Sure, on site.
But are the universities sometimes, do they appear entrepreneurial enough for you? Do they respond to what you want?
I think academia moves like molasses. So, it's, I'm very impatient. If we have an idea, let's start working on the idea. There's a whole process to go through at the university. So what that simply means for me is I have to really slow it down and be patient and wait for it to filter through. If you were to talk to them, I'm sure they'd suggest that we move at a lightning pace, but for us, the decisions are made right there at the moment. And for them, there's a whole network of bureaucracy that they have to go through. But that said, it's working. It's it's coming to full fruition.
Well done. And as you say, more pages to be written yet.
Certainly.
So we'll look forward to that. Patric, you explained a little bit of your joining Westport as employee number 2 right out of postdoc and so on. But since that time, what's been the link with the university that's worked well for you or not?
Well, I must say, I'm thinking about the link to university in kind of 2 phases. One was the formative stage of Westport, and then the ongoing collaboration. As Westport was started, we had amazing support from the UILO, the University Industry Liaison Office, that really made it easy for companies like us to start. So for at least 2 or 3 years, we were really still embedded in UBC. We had offices there. We had access to the lab under a rental agreement. We had access to research engineers, and we had access to technicians and so on. So during that initial growth, UBC was tremendously important. It was not only patents, it was not only ideas, but there was also a whole lot of support that came along with that, and that was tremendously important. At some point, of course, we had to get out. We were getting too big, too invasive, too greedy, maybe. But in any case, we had to go, which we did in 1998, about 3 years after. So that's kind of the initial stage, and this was it was a fantastic success, I would think, in terms of a university industry collaboration to spin a company out. And it was classic university spin-off. Great researcher, but could not really run a business. Great entrepreneur, but didn't really have the right ideas, and all together that worked out nicely. And the UILO really made that gel. The collaborative stage after that has remained very strong and very important. Why? Because, let's face it, Vancouver is not exactly a hotbed of automotive engineers, right? I mean, and where are they? Where are the companies in automotive? And that's what we hire. So that's a pretty tough challenge. Of course, we can get some people from Ontario to come. Some of them like to come to Vancouver, but there's a limit to that. So having an ongoing research program at UBC was important. And it's not only getting PhDs, it's not only getting masters, but because there's researchers there, they have summer students, they have undergrad projects. So you get undergraduate students as well coming along with that. You get co-ops that have worked on your engine at the university. So that's actually remained very important to us from a human resource point of view. I should get some stats on that, but certainly we have a significant amount of both grad students and undergrad that came to the company because of the work we sponsored there. So that's been important. Now, there's more to it, right? There's access to facilities, specialized facilities. There's access to researchers that have specialized tools that we don't necessarily have internally as well. But I would say one of the big return there is the specialized or the highly qualified people that come after that.
And maybe the other thing which I've always found interesting with Westport is how you've kept Dr. Philip Hill, who was the original researcher or professor interested in this, how you've kept him and his lab kind of close to Westport. And I think you've managed kind of looking further out for new products and that sort of thing. Has there been that link with the university that's been useful for you?
Yeah, so Phil, or Dr. Hill, that was a principal investigator, was my research supervisor, is now coming to Westport still almost every day. Half-time, although his half-time sometimes is a little elastic. Still very passionate about the venture and the technology. So for many years, Phil at UBC continued to improve upon what had been done at the university in the early days. Of course, at the company, we were trying to make that very practical, demonstrate it on buses, on trucks, get the manufacturing, but he would look at increased performance, increased efficiency, and you invent something new, and like a diesel engine's been around for what? 100 years. And there's still way more research on diesel engines than for natural gas. People are still researching it, right? It's just not finished. But we invented this little thing in 10 years. Well, there's 100 years worth of work to be done, right? So there's still a lot of understanding to be created. And of course, as Phil started to retire, the department there realized that there was a great partnership, made sure there were continuity, hired new researchers that were interested in this field. And these researchers did two things. One is try to improve our understanding of the fundamentals, but also with the right guidance. And that's a difficult thing is, how do you create a situation where a next good idea can come? And there's a lot of chance involved. There's a lot of serendipity. I haven't found a recipe for that, because if, in my early days, I would constrain the work to very specific things. And I realized if you do that, you don't get enough spark, right? And then if you go the other extreme, you leave it completely free. Sometimes you don't hear what's going on at all for 2 years. And somewhere in there's a place for new ideas to be created. There's a few examples of that now.
Yeah. No, thank you, Patrick. I think that's really interesting and a great example of kind of how you still keep some of the faculty members interested in your own product areas and doing that work into the future. So that's good. So I'm giving perhaps a couple of minutes warning that we're going to open up for questions. And before I do, I'd like to ask the panel really around what advice would you have? So you've laid out what the company's been. You've laid out how you've got involved over many years. You've laid out dealing with universities, or you're dealing with academic links. But what advice would you have generally for entrepreneurs in the audience that you've learned, that you think was either a moment that was really important to you, that you realized kind of this was really important, or you realized you were going the wrong direction and had to change? So, Darryll, do you want to start off with that?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, as you pose the question, I'm thinking to myself, what's been the most important thing that I've learned in 10 years when we've been at death's door numerous times? I think to your statement of where you start and where you mean to go is not a straight line. It goes all over the place, and you have to be able to react. You have to be able to change direction. I think the difference between success and failure is somebody stops. I'm often asked, if we delved into some of the darker days, how did we stay afloat? It's simply because we didn't stop. We didn't know that there was a choice. And I see invariably, different businesses, different opportunities dying because somebody decided that they're either not going to change direction or that there was a choice, and the choice is I can give this up. It's not a part of my fabric, so there was no stopping. There was no ability to switch it off. If there's a message out there, understand that it's not a straight line to where you go, and if you're going to start something, you need to know that perhaps throw away the ability to stop, and I think you'll get there.
That's a really interesting comment, because I think, just to interject for a second or two, when Tim went through some of the things we did in the IT business back at NPR and other companies, we used to talk about hitting the wall at least 3 times. So in other words, you start off in a certain direction, but you realize that isn't entirely right. If the product's not going to make it, you've got to refinance or whatever it is. You've got to get onto another track. But that happens more than once before you're successful. And I think part of what we learned from all of that was that you have to as well provide that environment where failure is okay. And then you can learn from that and do very well. So thank you, Darryll, for that. Terry, what's your advice?
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned don't accept or don't allow yourself to stop. And I would just add on to what you said, Alan, is it's not a straight line. So keep those avenues open, or at least keep your mind thinking broadly for a different application, a different way of doing it. Because quite often, especially in the technology field, I don't know, Patric, you run into this, people get all excited about a new technology, but they don't really know what the application is. And the technology without an application is not going to keep your company afloat. So thinking more broadly, thinking of different avenues, different applications, and being flexible. As you said, being flexible.
Was there any time in Stemcell where you hit the wall, or has it always been smooth sailing for Stemcell?
It definitely hasn't always been smooth sailing, but we did diversify very early. Yeah. We had a number of different products, and we have invested heavily in certain product lines that to launch the product, we just hit a brick wall. I've been head of R&D the whole 20 years, and we've hit some big brick walls. But fortunately, we were diversified enough that there were other avenues that we could take and keep ourselves afloat. I think one of the biggest challenges, and I think it's often underestimated, is you can get a great invention, typically will come out of a university, let's say, and in the inventor's hands it works. But trying to scale it up and make it foolproof so that all the customers out there can make it work every time, especially in the biological system, is a big challenge. And you can get a long way down that development road and run into a brick wall that you won't be able to solve. And that's happened to us several times.
Yeah, interesting. Patric, what advice would you have? Because you've gone through quite a few stages.
Yeah, I always have fun with this because often when I get a chance to reflect about the early years, I go to my shelf, and in my shelf there's my 1994 business plan that we worked together as a small team, right? And I just love opening it to the first few pages, right? So I look at that, and I was telling that to SFU students not long ago. I look at that, and we had concluded then that we needed, on top of the NSERC, NRC-IRAP, BC Science Council, $2.3 million, we needed another $1.7 million to commercialize the technology by 1998. Right? And literally it took really until 2007, so it took 10 years longer than expected, and it ended up being more like $250 million or something like that, right? So then the students were all happy saying, well, that means you don't need to write a business plan, right? Because it's obviously going to be garbage, or wrong. But I told them they were not very happy about that. No, there were things in that business plan that we actually followed through, and the vision that was established in that business plan in 1994 carried us forward for many, many, many years. In fact, some elements of it still work today, right? So that initial vision, even though some of it ended up being completely wrong by, my goodness, I can't even imagine we thought it would take so little. It carried us forward year after year with high persistence, and of course you got to reevaluate it every year, and it still happens today. Every year you got to go back at it, relook at your plan. Are we doing the right thing? Should we diversify? Where should we diversify? So you do it, you spend months on it, and you got to do it again. But so I would say that that establishing that vision and reevaluating often is really important, and it takes persistence as we hear it here as well.
No, thanks, Patrick. And Darryll, I was just thinking as Patrick was talking that how far do you look out? What is your vision? And we were talking a bit about the size of the company, but in fact that's not really your vision. Your vision is more around the value, I think, of your products. Is that right? Or
Well,
how far do you look out?
The plan currently is a 5-year plan, and we certainly assess ourselves. I would say that we're assessing our plan continuously, not year to year. Year to year, we do a formal assessment where we, all come together and decide on the path for the next year. But throughout the year, we don't wait to see if the end of the year was correct. We constantly review what we're, the climate, the economic climate, which market we're in, how we're doing in each market. So on a move forward basis, we're constantly reviewing what we do. 5-year plan. 5-year plan is really just a guide to make sure that everything makes sense. You get an awful lot of pressure from investors saying, where's the liquidity event? That's kind of something I hear a lot. But we have strategies to deal with that, and we just need to continuously evolve. And if we evolve, I think everybody sees that. If we're moving forward and constantly adding value, I think everybody remains calm. So that's kind of our plan.
Good. No, thank you. So I would like to open it up, because I think the more discussion we can get going, the better it is. And maybe whether we can turn up the lights perhaps a little bit, if that's possible. But we have a question at the top. Maybe you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name's Lee Bishloff. In my past, I ran university research for PMC Sierra, along with a whole bunch of other things. I was a bit terrified when I heard 132 collaborations, and also Patric's comment about 1.6 million turning into 250, because the problem that I see with the collaboration, and I like to do it, and I've done it a few times, is intellectual property rights when you're dealing with the UILOs and the perception of the value of what it is they're producing. If you think you're 90% of the way there and you're actually only 1%, then what's the value? And if you have combinational products, which you may not in the health industry, I don't know, but in ICT we certainly do, it becomes very, very difficult to get those IP terms nailed down, and they just always get in the way. So I'd like to hear how you have circumvented those problems, or how you deal with them.
So Terry, do you want to take the first one, and Patrick take the second?
Yeah. Well, I mentioned that we had 132 collaborations. We also do a lot of in-licensing, and you've hit the nail on the head. They think they've got this great invention, but they're really only 2% of the way there. There's so much work and many uncertainties involved. And we do kits in that you have multiple reagents that go into it, and they can have different licenses involved. The way we deal with it is to set quite strict guidelines for us, and we negotiate hard, and we include anti-stacking clauses. You've probably heard of that, in that if you have 5 different parties They want a royalty on their contribution to a certain kit or whatever. They get, to a certain maximum, a couple percent or something. And then the anti-stacking clause comes in, and for the rest, they only get a fraction, or that's the ceiling, so that you don't end up paying, 20% royalty on some product like that. But it's a lot of work. We have 5 people in our licensing department working on these kind of agreements. And I think one of the most difficult situations is when you have a collaboration where either you don't set the IP terms up at the beginning, which can be a disaster, or that you agree you're going to have joint IP. Joint IP is very, very difficult. We do our best to delineate, this is our IP, this is your IP. Going forward, we're drawing a line, we're defining it that way. And that's the most successful collaborations we've had, is when you don't end up with joint IP.
Thanks, Terry. Patric, in terms of started at 1.6 million or whatever, ended up at 250. What kept you going?
Well, I'll answer the question first regarding IP handling with the university. So, I guess in the early days, this was we had negotiated a deal such that UBC took ownership at 7%, I think, ownership into Westport, and they were going to have an X% royalty on revenues. At some point, this became confusing because we were starting to develop more partners. We had products that were no longer related to the university IP because we've had developed many other technologies in the years that came, and we basically ended up renegotiating the deal and buying the IP outright, which was at the time probably a good move. And so we simplified things at the time. My experience so far with other work is that it's rarely a big challenge. Either an invention is not good and is not interesting enough, and you could choose to lose a lot of time on the IP. My experience so far is, if you're in that gray category, I don't bother trying to get into a strong licensing agreement if the technology is gray or maybe, because nobody's going to spend enough time on it. If it's really important to your company, you'll negotiate the best deal you can for both sides, right? And my experience with UILO is they have a win-win attitude too. We both want to make it work on both sides, and they've been flexible. And if things need to change, they'll change. So for the really important things, we've managed to make this work. And for the rest, well, it's your choice how much distraction you wanna take with the maybes. We can, all of us, probably spend too much time with the maybes. No, typically the maybes end up, you fund a piece of work because it looks interesting. Either it's your idea, either it's their idea. At the end of the day, there's IP generated, and you have an option to it. And if it will take more money to develop it, then you need to settle what you're going to do with this IP. Typically, if it's not interesting enough, I don't even want to get there. I'll just accept that there's a risk that the university can maybe use that somewhere else. And usually I make a risk evaluation. Who else might be interested? And usually it's related enough to my stuff that if I'm not interested, other people are less likely to be interested.
Thank you. Darryll, just while we're still on that topic, do you have to worry about know-how or intellectual property, whatever, when you deal with SFU? Or not particularly?
With SFU, we haven't. It's too early stages for that. We were, but 2 IP issues. We had a brewer in the U.S. come up and attack us in the most malicious way with an IP claim, and the problem with the claim was, I think we certainly had the moral high ground. We won in the early stages, and it was in a district court in Massachusetts, and that that stirred the pot for me because I felt that it was the right thing to do to defend it. We're Canadian, they're American. But that was so ill thought out. 2 years later and, literally millions of dollars, I ended up being faced with, do you build the new facility or do you carry on the lawsuit? So I acquiesced and walked away. So IP is a big it's a big issue for us now when we don't move anything without it being well protected.
Another question? John? Thank you, John. Thanks, Lee.
Hi. I'm kind of curious. Two of the three of you have used the UBC or SFU, the universities, the government, to start up your businesses. There's an adage out there that governments don't create jobs, and yet a lot has emanated from two of the three of you, and the third one has gone back to the university and found some use for it. My question is the government, do you have thoughts that the government's doing enough, both provincially and federally, and foundations in terms of support of technology of all kinds? And if there's some tweaking that might be done, either by way of more funding beyond they have a number of bursaries across Canada, professorships and so on. But is there something that you would like to see the governments through the universities carry out to facilitate what you're doing? I heard the word molasses is one example of some of the problems with the university. So that's sort of my question from a Canadian or BC or provincial government.
So if you were Premier for a day or Prime Minister for a day, what changes would you make, or what would you like to do, or what would you like government to do to help corporate growth, either as you've come through or in the future? Who would like to take that?
I can have a start. I don't want to get frustrated about that, though, so I'll try to stay as positive as possible. The government, from my perspective, the university funding has been fantastic. It's been steady, it's been solid, it's been good, it's been flexible. So I've been quite impressed. It covers a whole range of activities from equipment. Sponsorship of grad students going to companies and so on. There's a lot there. I think that I really appreciate that. So I think that's very good. But not all R&D can be done in the universities. There are certain things that the universities are great at, and there's other things they're not very good at, and they know that. So there's all sorts of R&D that can be better done in companies, and that's a more debatable area. We of course have received some government help, and we're happy about that, but we've received probably far more help from the US government than we have from the Canadian government as direct company investment. So that remains a bit the debate is should there be more corporate targeted R&D programs in the country? Is there enough? Is the R&D tax credit sufficient or not? There is some, but it tends to target certain type of work or certain sizes of activities. We feel that that's something that needs to be looked at some point.
No, thank you, Patric. Terry or Darryll?
I would just support that. We have had 3 very successful IRAP, either loan or granting situations that have worked extremely well. But I think, as you say, there are certain type of research that will be done in the industry setting. It won't be done at the universities, and they create jobs. And I think you can set up the grant such that or grant or loan, so that the return on the value is seen there. And I think they need to look south of the border to the kind of programs they have in the United States. They're a lot better than American.
Yes, and certainly on the life science side, I think the Small Business Innovation Research Program, SBIR program in the U.S. is very successful.
Exactly.
And I think something like that here would be good.
Yeah, and just to clarify, I think it's been good for the small company at the start. So again, we also had an NRC-IRAP in the early days. It's just as you grow suddenly, you have pretty significant R&D programs, and that's where it becomes thin a little bit in terms of the opportunities.
Darryll, if you had any advice for any level of government getting involved? I think you've got some links with the municipal government.
Sure. Well, municipal, provincial. So municipal, there's a lot of rhetoric around us and the city of Surrey. The papers would suggest, and when people blog, why is the city of Surrey helping Central City Brewing Company? It makes beer. But the realities of the situation is Surrey's a business, and they've leased us the land. They haven't given us anything. They're extremely well covered by agreements, GSA, and they're borrowing it at MFP rates, and they're leasing at probably double the MFP. So I think that it really works for Surrey, and it really works for our business. What Surrey gets out of it, obviously, is an increased tax base. They employ people. They get beautiful buildings instead of boxes. So on the municipal level, I can play both sides of the argument, but and defend both sides of the argument. On the provincial side, I think the venture capital corporations and the models for EBC are well thought out. They're well constructed, and if you look at the long term, especially when you consider GDP of our process, what we do, there's a lot more going in. There's a lot more going into the economy than people realize, especially over the long term. So from a provincial standpoint, I think there could be more cooperation with businesses in BC, especially when government are in those businesses. They're actually a competitor. I see lots of issues there, but I'm going to be careful what I say. On the federal side, we haven't really engaged there yet, but certainly that's something we will get to at one point.
Good, thanks, Darryll. Another question? I think John has a question here. And there's a question over here as well. So,
hi, my name's John Barkley. Darryll, we spoke outside, and Alan kindly asked me to be prepped with a question. So, Darryll, my question's for you. I guess the competitive landscape of beer has evolved significantly over the life of Central City, particularly with the evolving craft beer space. And I'm guessing this is forcing you to be creative about sort of the different collaborations, as evidenced by your collaboration with SFU to gain competitive advantage. So from that in mind, I'd be interested in what you're exploring, without giving anything away, from sort of a technology development and a technology adoption perspective. So, and even are you looking at biotechnology at all as a space for to gain some competitive advantage?
Sure. So our relationship with SFU is all faculties open door. We've invited them in to look at what we do, and I sincerely believe, and I'm motivated to work with SFU because of, frankly, their brain power. They will advance us. There's no question about that. And I believe that they'll also help industry here through, working with us and the dissemination of that information, as I said. What's interesting about working with SFU is we put together a program, and I believe that program will monetize itself within our relationship. I believe that anything that they put out now, it will come back very quickly. Their ROI, I think, is something 3-4 years. So the relationship I have with SFU is that they put the money back into the program. So specifically, I'm talking about distilling. Distilling is now in a new and emerging market in BC because of what government did in the first quarter of last year. They need to work harder on it. There's no question about that, and I'm quite vocal about that area. But that said, there's no industry in BC for that, and I think if the university works with us the way we've structured this, I think that it will be self-perpetuating. They won't actually have to pay for the program. Whenever I've sat with them in the past, they're very concerned about how they cover the costs. Whose pot is it going to come out of? And what we've offered is something that I think the university will continue to, do monetize within yourself. Don't keep going back to the public purse. So with that kind of philosophy, we've sat down and we've tried to build a model for it. And I believe it'll be successful.
Good. Thank you, Darryll. I think there was one question here.
My name is Stuart Carmichael. Background in software engineering. The question so generally is about competition and competitors in the field. How that shaped your growth, your decisions about what research to pursue or what acquisitions to make. Just generally the story behind competitors outside your business.
So I guess the general question, if anyone didn't hear that, was then how do competitors shape what you do? And do you want to take a minute and answer that?
I can answer it straight off. We have a couple of very big competitors. One in particular that is head-to-head competing with about half of our products. And certainly it has pushed us to look for a different or better way to do things. And that aspect or those product lines the technology has gone ahead in leaps and bounds.
Interesting.
So we've ended up putting, I'd say, more research effort into that area to become more competitive because it's almost like an arms race in that area. And also, better performance, but also looking at doing it in a completely different way and to differentiate ourselves from the competitors. So it really has shaped what we've done.
Any other comments?
Yeah, although we live that, I'll give you a different example. There was a time where a bunch of engine manufacturers were doing natural gas engines, but each of them was spending in a very traditional way. How many engines am I going to be able to sell? Therefore, how much can I invest in my product development to justify that sale? And the numbers were small, right? And we took a different approach. We said, this traditional view of the world is going to take forever, right? It's just not a shift. So we invested much, much more than those competitors at that time. And we essentially killed them all, at that early stage. And even though 5 years ago or let's say 4 or 5 years ago, the tide reversed, like everybody thought they could, now make many more sales, we gained so much time, that in North America, we ended up with a product line, that generated, $250 million last year. There was nobody else with anything in that line, right? So we had really thwarted the picture. Now that's going to change, right? So now we're going to face more competition. But early on, we took a strategy of, we don't think this is a story like this. We think it's a story like this. No, it's a gamble, right? You don't know how it's going to turn out, but for us, it worked immensely well.
We have time for, I think we've got
if
one
it's
last question.
a really quick question.
So I think, sorry, at the top, I think a couple behind was first.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Sorry, just right. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for wonderful dialogue. My quick question for you is, in the first day of commercialization, long time ago, how important was the international markets? How important they were for you, and versus domestic markets? And what came first? Was that international and the national, or was it really national? So you overgrow your sales, and then you went to find the customers outside Canada. Thank you.
Thanks, Joanna.
Well, for stem cell technologies, it's always been international. It's from the get-go. It was the world was the market because Canada is just too small.
Too small.
Especially for the niche type products that we have.
Patric?
Yeah, similar story. For us, the markets were placed where there were acute environmental challenges And it was California first, it was India, it was Beijing, it was China, it was South America. It just wasn't about Canada, and frankly, it's still not as very much Canada. So for us, it was very, very global from very early on.
Yeah. And I noticed there were, I'm sorry we have to cut this off, I guess, Jim, at this point. There were a couple of questions which were quite interesting ones as well coming through on the system. One about how much do you use brainstorming in the company, and how important is it to choose the team such that the brainstorming results in positive effect? Another question was around, do you really find lawyers useful? So I think we've got, and I've got a question here as well. So I think we've got a lot of discussion when we're going to enjoy Darryll's beer. So thank you very, very much from our side. Thank you to each of the panel members for being part of this. This has just been great, and I think it's really whetted our appetite for a lot more discussion, which we can do outside. So, Tim, back to you.
If you don't mind, I do have one question for Darryll specifically, and I would like to emphasize just how important Darryll is to our evening. I made a small request as what would be appropriate, and he said, I'll bring a couple of things along for people to have a taste. I was wondering if you might be able to tell us a little bit about what you've brought and what type of beer is. And
Sure. So our whole philosophy is, our mindset, our mantra is not how many liters we produce. For most breweries, it's growth, and ours is it's on the product line. So an example of that would be a pale ale versus an imperial porter, of which there's some here tonight. So an imperial porter, they take maybe 10 days longer to make, and their cost of the product is maybe 15% more, but their retail is 50% more. So we're very focused on the high end of beer, and we continue to focus on barrel-aged products. So there's an imperial porter here tonight that's barrel-aged, and for us, that's where we want to be. That's our passion. And that's our focus. We have a bottle-conditioned barley wine. Again, our focus is it's now at the very high end. We're not. We don't actually pay too much attention to what everybody else is doing. We're not trying to follow trend. We're actually trying to set it. And I have a great deal of confidence in the brewing team and their passion for beer. So we let them loose and they decide. There's not a debate from upstairs. It's what, I'm going to them and I'm saying, what are we making? What are we doing? And then give it to the marketing team to take to market. So tonight, we've brought an IPA. So our IPA has won numerous awards across Canada and into the US. The Imperial Porter won a silver medal at the World Beer Cup, which is the highest accolade a beer can get. And the barley wine a gold medal at the World Beer Cup. So that's how we define ourselves. We don't have to spend tons of money on marketing because those awards, you're in an ocean of competitors. You've got 3,500 breweries across Canada and the US. So you have to separate yourself from them, and we choose to focus heavily on quality and at the high end. So IPA, imperial IPAs, porters, stouts, barley wines, and now we're probably the biggest wood program in a Canadian brewery. So barrel-aged products. In the 6 months that we've had our new facility, we've already got to that level. We're stacking barrels every day, and that's our focus, and that's what we've brought here this evening.
Thank you very much for that, and a big round of applause both for Darryll for bringing the beer, and the rest of our panelists for a very lively discussion. No good get together would not be without a few nibbles. We have some food outside for you to enjoy. Please be conservative. We have other guests, but also please enjoy some beer. Special thank you for Colony Networks for providing the Wi-Fi so we could access our Twitter account. And also, again, thank you very much to our lightning pitchers, NSERC, for partnering us with that event. If you had any questions, please feel free to come on down. And I'd like to invite you out to next month's event, which is on clean technology. And this will be just the first event leading up to Globe, so you can get a head start on what's going on. So thank you very much, everybody, and a big round of applause for both lightning pitchers and our attendees. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Darryll. Thank you, Erez.
Pleasure.
Great.
My neighbor had the same thing. She's gliding now. Brian Buggy is